Hey everybody, it's Eric Johnson. I just had a bowl of popcorn, so hopefully there's not any in my teeth. I know it's been a while, it's been a couple of months. I've had 6 people private message me saying, "When are you going to do a video? What's going on?" And I was pleased to see that people cared enough to even bother. What happened was I was going to go on my trip in fall, this last fall. I didn't go. And the reason I didn't go was a couple of things happened. Well, a number of things happened. Some of them personal, not bad stuff. Just stuff that distracted me a bit. And had some stuff to do with my condo, etc. And so what the deal was, I was going to go, and I got to the point where I was setting up everything to go. And I said to myself, I had a real moment where I sat there and I said, I guess I was kind of tired of going out there. That was part of it. And so, but anyway, I said to myself, and not in a bad way, but you know what I mean? I mean, two trips, 2017, 2 trips in 2018, 1 trip in 2019. And I'm centering on the Madison River area in Montana, right outside of Yellowstone on the west side of Yellowstone. I think that's a very big area for Fenn hunters to concentrate on. And I said to myself, okay, Eric, now what's going to happen when we go on this trip? I plan to go to a couple museums. I plan to visit a couple of places along the Madison River. Excuse me. And I said, okay, what do you really think about the odds of finding the treasure? And I said to myself, 0. I'm literally going out there not thinking I'm going to find the treasure. And I never have done that. As crazy as some of my trips have been in the past, I never dismiss the trips I've taken, whether it be the Molly Brown summer house that I went to, or Vermilion Creek. For all I know, those are still valid. But I have come to realize for my own reasons that I've come to find new reasons and new places to go. So I'm now in the Madison River area. The bottom line is, I said to myself, you're not going to find it. You should really know you're going to find it, instead of wasting your time, effort, and money on these trips. And so I just didn't go. And at the same time I didn't go, I did something very conscious. I said, Eric, like I said, it's been a combination of things. Not so much tired of the chase, but confused by it. Confused by the stuff I have figured out. You're supposed to figure out more as you go along, and I feel like I've gotten into it a lot more, but not necessarily learned what I need to know. There's still this big thing I feel I'm doing where I'm missing the big. Fenn has said there's one big thing people are missing. I think I'm missing that. I don't know what it is. I think it's a way of understanding an incredibly important thing we all have to do. We have to understand the context of this poem. Fenn has said there are hundreds of places in the Rocky Mountains that could be where warm waters halt. You can't just go out there, or you can, but you shouldn't just go out there trying to figure out every place that could be perceived as where warm waters halt. Some people have done 150 trips. I think I read recently on a blog that some woman had done 300 trips. She could very well be doing it, that she's just going to hit every single place she can think of. And if you live in that area, I suppose it's a wonderful way to spend a weekend, right? If you live close to it, but for the rest of us that are taking plane flights or driving overnight or whatever we're doing to get there, you can't just go out there, and Fenn himself has said you really shouldn't just go out there, kind of hit or miss. Almost like the amount of trips is going to suffice, because I don't think it is. I think it's way too exact for that. I think you could find every single place you consider, whether it's an aqua fria, which means cold water in Spanish, or whether it's a place like Flaming Gorge, which you could construe as being warm water because it's a gorge with water in it. It's called flaming, so therefore warm waters, although we know that flaming refers actually to the sunlight that was seen on the walls of the gorge by the first European that saw it, and he called it Flaming Gorge because of the warm sunlight. There has to be a specific correlation between the clues and the hints. The hints are the book, the clues are the poem. The hints explain the clues explain the location of the treasure. The hints explain the clues give you the map to the treasure. If there is not an actual, and Fenn has said there is, Fenn has said the hints are in there, they're not in order with the clues, which I thought was very interesting. He was making it very clear. If you find what you perceive to be hints, don't look at the poem and think, oh, I found this hint's in the front of the book, it must go with the first stanza, this hint's with, it must go with the third stanza. He said there's no order to the hints, but the hints will illuminate, as it were, the clues in the poem. Now, I have a pretty friggin' involved theory about where I think the treasure is. And I was going to talk about it a little, and I may still, but it kind of goes against the concept of Fenn's that you should not need special knowledge. On the other hand, he tells his stuff. There are references to I don't want to make this so cryptic. I think there's a very good possibility that Fenn is not the narrator of the poem. Maybe that's the one thing he says we're all missing and we need to understand. Maybe he is talking about the location of the treasure being buried somewhere, and he is using a story of a different person altogether. Could be a Wild West person. Could be a mountain man. He talks about the outlaws, talks about the mountain men. All these people were in the Rockies at various stages of their careers. And what if Fenn was adopting the persona of one of these people? This is not a new idea. Other people have thought of it, but it's not a real big idea. A lot of people have kind of dismissed it, it seems. What if the story that Fenn is telling is the story of another person? Remember when Fenn took Donnie and they went looking for Lewis and Clark? They went looking for, was it the Lewis and Clark Trail? Was it a particular place? When I was in Montana, I visited a place which, looking back, was kind of a cool place. I was up on this mountain, and the placard, or the board where I was standing, said if you look over the river, I want to say it was the Jefferson River, or was it the Madison River? So if you look over the river from this particular place that was up on this little mountain, you had to scramble up this kind of path that they had. It was a little park type thing they had set up for visitors. You can see where Lewis and Clark's camp had breakfast on such and such a morning in the Travels of Lewis and Clark. I even kind of said to myself, could that be it? Could Fenn at one time, because we know Fenn did things like he'd like to go out and find things. What if in fact the place that he decided he would love to spend his last moments breathing was a place out of lore, out of folklore, out of mountain folklore, that he had gone looking for, and he had found it, and he had adopted it as a really cool place he would like to put the treasure chest, and also, as he has said, go throw my body over the chest and die. So, read that poem maybe thinking he is telling a separate story than himself doing something. And if you can find a story that fits, which I think I have, I'm not going to talk about it today, and that's not a tease, but I'll probably talk about it in the future, because the problem I have with it is I had to read folklore, I had to read Western mountain man type lore. I had to kind of read things to find this narrative. And although a lot of it seems to add up, I still, Fenn has said you don't really need special knowledge. But I've always thought when Fenn said you didn't need special knowledge, that he was really talking about things like you don't need to know the conversion between metrics and feet, or centigrade to Fahrenheit, those kind of things, or how to use a certain tool. I mean, he kind of put it in that sense. But then again, see, this is what made me take a step back. And we also know Fenn had said you could just find the treasure with just the poem. You could find the treasure with just the poem in the book. Shouldn't need anything else. Then I remember one time in one of the question and answer periods on Jenny Kyle's page that someone asked Fenn, would you still say after all the information you've given out, like it's only in the 4 states of the Rockies and all that kind of thing, do you think if you went back to the very first day you released it, keeping in mind people when they're could have gone into places like Utah, etc., and been totally misunderstanding where they're supposed to be going, do you think they would have been able to find it without some of the stuff you've given us since the book was released? And he said, no, I don't. So he has said things like you can find it with just the poem in the book, and then later on said, well, in retro, in looking back, no. I mean, you could have gone off the rails because I hadn't kind of made it a narrower search. So you get to a point where you just have to, what did he mean by special knowledge? Who knows? But I'll tell you something I did. I was at that point before I canceled my last trip where I said, Eric, don't just cancel the trip. Literally quit thinking about this thing. If you remember the old thing you've ever heard where they say if you want to remember something or figure something out, the best thing to do sometimes if you're overthinking is just to literally try to distract yourself completely from it. That kind of worked because I just had other things to do. It all kind of was a perfect storm of things to just take me away from worrying about the hunt for a while. You know what I mean? So I had other things I was doing anyway. And like this winter, I'm thinking maybe I'll go down to Key West for a week. Never been there. So, it'll be a non-Fenn thing, and I probably won't do any video of it. Other things going on. So, a couple of things did come to me. As far as my theory that's kind of got a lot of reading involved in it outside of the book and the poem, I did kind of come to realize that there was only one spot in the Madison area that I really thought was worth looking at. And that was good. The other thing that happened that really doesn't have so much to do with not thinking about the poem and seeing kind of what percolates up through my mind about the poem and maybe gives me some insights rather than this constant overthinking the poem. I'll talk about in the next video, and I don't think I think that'll pretty much do it. What I'm going to for today's video, what I'm going to talk about is not some. I know there's going to be someone who says I've already thought of that. I already did a video on that, folks. We've been through this 100 times. I'm not presuming to be always coming up with original ideas. And it's amazing how often I come up with a video. Someone has to make it very clear that even if they didn't put out a video on it, they thought of it first. Folks, this isn't a contest for me. The only thing this is a contest for is beating other people to the treasure. If you want to sit there and get into pissing contests about who thought up what first, go ahead. It really doesn't matter to me at all if you thought of something before I did, or everyone else, or the smartest person in the room. You may very well be. Could very well be some real dumbass that find this treasure because they are smart, and I include myself. Oh, I would love to be the dumbass that found the treasure. Just because they saw it in such a simple fashion. It was so obvious to them, and the rest of us are just way too thinking too complicatedly about it. All right, talk to you in a second. Coming up, part 2.